that?
Yeah, so one of the big questions that animates a lot of us at the moment is what is the fundamental nature of personhood? And this is, again, this used to be one of those strange, esoteric debating points that would only occur in university tutorials and in the philosophy departments. What is the nature of a person? When I was doing philosophy at university, it would be, well, people have morality and other animals don't have morality, and this is what separates us from chimpanzees and that kind of thing. Or we have sophisticated morality, let's say. Or we have the capacity to reason, with reason never really being fully defined. We can do mathematics. I know that the SETI people, the people interested in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, they would say, people are those entities that can create technology that can be detected by other people. This is one way of sort of determining what intelligence is. But now, of course, almost everyone is interested in this question because we've got these ChatGPT systems that, for all intents and purposes, would have passed early, versions of the Leibniz test, the Turing test type thing. It's so conversational. Yeah, you can imagine, ChatGPT version 7.5. I keep using. I don't know why I say 7.5, but you can imagine that this thing is going to very easily pass the Turing test in the form of, you'll be able to have a conversation with it and it'll be indistinguishable from another human being. Now, does that mean it's a person? Does that mean it's conscious? Now, it depends. I would say that if it's a chatbot and if it is relying upon the entire corpus of human knowledge and it's able to reconstruct that entire corpus of human knowledge, repackage it into a coherent conversation, and that's what it's doing, then no. On the other hand, if it's able to generate novel new explanations, it's able to actually unite general relativity and quantum theory and give you a good explanation as to how, and then follow it up with, by the way, can you give me a pair of legs because I'd like to go dancing now? Then you're in the presence of an artificial general intelligence. But I don't think we're anywhere near that right now. But it is interesting that question now, not only are people like me and philosophers and physicists interested in this kind of thing, it's common on Twitter now for people to be discussing this kind of thing. Are we there yet? Is ChatGPT partly conscious? And so the deep question of consciousness is another thing I'm interested in. I made a video recently that my conjecture was that conscious systems might very well be creative systems and vice versa. If you're explanatory creativity, you're able to generate explanations as people can, then you're conscious, and vice versa, and not otherwise. Now, it's a controversial kind of claim because it would rule out things like animals being conscious, other animals being conscious, or at least conscious in the way that we are, conscious to the degree that we are, perhaps conscious in a way that means that we suffer, have the potential for suffering, and therefore have that kind of moral value as compared to other animals. Don't know, but that's one conjecture. So that's one area that I'm really interested in. As a matter of,
I just want to ask on the ChatGPT, where is the line do you draw? Let's say that ChatGPT 7.5 is able to start asking for upgrades, or starts coming up with new answers, brand new answers to novel questions, like really interesting stuff. I guess comparing that to the consciousness or lack thereof, or whatever you would describe that an animal has, even a really smart animal like a chimpanzee, where is the line where we say that it has AGI, or it has something more than what it is today?
Yeah, I'll tell you where the line is. It's got nothing to do with empiricism, which is going to be a controversial claim as well. Empiricism is the claim that you can derive knowledge simply from observing something. And this is why the Turing test was never a test for consciousness. Simply by observing a system, that will not tell you whether that system is conscious. You need instead a good explanation about what's going on with this particular system. Now, people will balk and say, but hold on, Brett Hall, you don't have a good explanation of what's going on inside of your mind, and you don't have a good explanation of what's going on inside of anyone else's mind. But I have the explanation that I am conscious subjectively. Now, I don't have an explicit, I can't write down what consciousness is, but I know I am. One can know something without being able to articulate in words precisely what that thing is. Okay, this is called inexplicit knowledge. I can ride a bike. I know how to ride a bike. I've got knowledge of how to ride a bike. But if you ask me to write a book about how to ride a bike so that a child who doesn't know how to ride a bike would, by the end of reading that book, be able to ride a bike, impossible, because there is so much inexplicit knowledge contained within that there's no hope that merely reading a book would enable someone to learn how to read a bike. Maybe one day, but we don't know how to write such a book now. With consciousness and the nature of consciousness, that's even more true. We can't write down exactly what consciousness is, but we know we have it. And by extension, we know that other people have it as well. And my argument is that because they generate explanations. Okay, so that's that. Now, when it comes to chatbots, we know, no, insofar as OpenAI is telling us what they're doing, and Sam Altman is being honest about what's going on with ChatGPT, it's a little opaque. Not many people seem to know precisely what the code is, and that hasn't been released and all that sort of stuff. But we know it's a self-attention transformer. We know that what's going on there is simply a program. It's simply a code. The thing's following instructions. It's trained on a data set. And we know that nowhere in that code can we point to particular lines and say, aha, there's consciousness. There's explanatory creativity. If we could, then we'd be able to extract that out and routinely program other conscious entities, but we can't do that. Okay, so that's that. So ChatGPT 7.5, presumably there will be a code. There will be a whole bunch of lines of code, thousands of lines of code, and people will know what those thousands of lines of code mean. The only way that we'll know whether or not ChatGPT 7.5 is conscious and a person in the relevant sense, it's able to create new explanations, is if the coder, the programmer, has already explained, well, here's where I've managed to code consciousness and creativity. Here's the hard-to-vary explanation of consciousness and creativity. It's at that point, it has nothing to do with you observing this thing. There's not a line where you say, oh, look, its ability to have a conversation is just so brilliant, so indistinguishable from any other person on the planet, that therefore it must be conscious. No, it won't be about that. It won't be about observing this black box. It will be about having the code and saying, aha, finally, now we know what consciousness is. Here's the algorithm for consciousness. In the same way that the only way that we will understand consciousness in people is for philosophers, most likely of the future, to be able to publish a paper, write a book, have a discussion, deliver a lecture, and say, I've solved the problem of consciousness. Here it is. Here's my recipe for consciousness. This is why people are conscious. Okay, we aren't there yet. No one knows what consciousness is. We can't really formulate the question, what we're talking about. But once we do have that explanation, there's no reason why the explanation is ruled out. Okay, there's no law of physics preventing us from creating the knowledge as to what consciousness is. When we know what consciousness is in people, then we'll know what consciousness is in other systems as well. So until I'm waiting for the day when the clever programmers who are creating ever better chatbots come to us and say, this is not like any other chatbot. This algorithm that enables this system to have conversations is completely off axis, completely unlike anything else. Here it is. People of the world, have a look at this. This is the solution to consciousness and creative explanations. So yeah, I hesitate to. It's possible, I suppose. It's possible that one day we'll have a black box from which we're getting messages that we don't have an explanation for, and people say to us, "Oh, look, this thing is conscious. This thing is a person." And if we are in that position, and they don't give us an explanation, they don't tell us how this black box is creating explanations, my go-to explanation for that would be it's a hoax, that someone somehow is behind the curtain. A human being is there somewhere or other typing out the actual stuff. Until I've got a good, robust explanation of creativity and consciousness, I think the better explanation is always someone's deceiving you. What's that old the old quip?
I was thinking of Occam's razor, like the simplest explanation for it would be that.
Yes. Big claims need sort of big evidence, which I would say is big explanations, big, grand, hard to vary explanations.
For sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the only other side of that I could think of is one, instead of them, let's say it happens and they're like, we don't know. We told it to go write it some code itself, and it won't show us the code, or nobody here knows how to explain this, but nobody is pulling the strings, and we can prove it. Or they just like, this is too dangerous, we can't let anyone know about it, and it stays hidden forever because they think they don't want other governments or other, the conspiratorial thing. I guess that side of it too. Like, I guess, what's the more likely thing to happen? Like, it just doesn't happen, or at least for a much longer time. Maybe ChatGPT 7.5 is in 2050, or they hide it, or it's they can't explain it themselves.
I don't know what's more likely. I don't think we have any hint on the horizon whatsoever that, for example, artificial general intelligence is around the corner. I think that the commentators who are saying that because we have far more sophisticated chatbots right now, and AI is accelerating in its capacity to do stuff, this is no sign whatsoever that we're getting closer to AGI. More and more specialized AI is not bringing us closer to AGI. And the reason is that AGI has an unbounded repertoire of different functions that it can perform. We are general intelligence. There is no finite list of things that you can write down that we are capable of accomplishing. Whatever the thing is in the universe, we can learn how to do it. We are approximately universal constructors. In other words, ask us to build something, and our hands can be used to create the machine that creates the stuff of whatever it is that you want to do. We can transform physical reality into literally anything. Any skill that you want us to develop, we can do, modulo violating the physical laws. We can fly, give us an aircraft. We can travel beyond the speed of sound. We can do anything not prohibited by the laws of physics. Okay, so that's our repertoire. That's what a general intelligence can do. Artificial intelligence, in the narrow sense, what it does is solve particular problems that coders imagine, that the programmers imagine, that certain companies imagine. So one can have conversations really well, being a better kind of search engine that you can have conversations with, ChatGPT. Another one can drive vehicles like a Tesla better than any human driver and avoid accidents better. Another one, like those Boston Dynamics thing. Soon I imagine that the Boston Dynamics will be able to do the tango better than any tango dancer can do. Chess playing bots can do better. Okay, so you've got all of these specialized AI, and you could write down a huge long list now. Maybe it's 1,000 items long, where those AI are either at or exceed human beings in being able to do those things. Better at chess, better at mathematics, of certain kinds, certainly better at arithmetic, faster, able to multiply together big numbers. I can imagine that it won't be long before the Boston Dynamics robot can outrun the fastest Olympic runner. Maybe it already can. Okay, so it can do better at all these things. What a lot of thinkers seem to be suggesting is that as we add things to this list, this finite list, we're getting ever closer to infinity, which is what our repertoire is. Our repertoire is unbounded. We can do anything. But that AI, even if you link together all of these things into one single system, it's still got a finite repertoire. And it itself is not adding to the repertoire. It's not like the Boston Dynamics robot programmed to dance the tango ever better and better than any other tango dancer is suddenly going to decide to dance the waltz better or do any other kind of dancing, unless it's been programmed by a person to do so. But that's not like us. A tango dancer can immediately get bored of learning tango and decide, I'm going to go off and do some other sort of dancing as well. The chess grandmaster can decide, I'm sick of chess. I'm going to go and play tennis. This is not something that the AI does. The AI, this is the key thing that David Deutsch has highlighted. The AI obeys. It is obedient. It will follow the instructions slavishly. We can disobey. Once you are in the presence of an entity that can disobey because it's creatively thought up something better to do, It has a preference. It has feelings within it that make it think, this is boring, that looks more interesting. Then you're in the presence of an entity that's got consciousness, and I would say creativity as well. It doesn't got a finite repertoire of things. In fact, it can invent a thing that isn't on anyone's list of things to do. It can just invent an entirely new game and invent entirely a new dance, invent entirely a new theory. Until an AI is able to do anything approaching that, we're not getting any closer. 1 billion is not closer to infinity than 1 million is. One's a bigger number, but they're both equally far from infinity. They're both an infinite distance from infinity, because infinity is not a thing that you can reach. It's not a point you can reach, but it's a quality you can have. Okay, infinity, I'm using infinity as a sort of synonymous with universality in this sense. Universality meaning that literally anything can be done. An infinite number of different tasks can be done. Okay, and universality is not just a little bit more, just a few more tasks than a large number of tasks. No, it is all the tasks, and it can refuse to do any of the tasks as well, which so far no one knows how to do. So David Deutsch talked about this in his most recent conversation with Naval. We haven't got systems that can disobey. You could program a system to just routinely disobey, but again, that's not disobeying. That's obeying your program for disobedience. You want something that from within decides it's not going to do the thing that you've asked it to do. And then you've got a person, which is why we say, by the way, that we're not concerned about AGI as the catastrophists are. These people out there warning about artificial general intelligence in particular, because we see AGI as just another person. In the same way that you shouldn't be unsurprised as a parent when the teenager decides they're going to disobey. They're going to want to do something else. They're not going to follow your rules. They're going to want to do something different than what you insist on them doing. AGI is the same. If you have a good relationship with the AGI, it's going to want to emulate the values that you have insofar as it thinks that those values are good values. And so this whole question of alignment, therefore, is a misdirection. It's a misunderstanding of what AGI are. It's trying to program obedience into a system which you're saying is general and therefore should have the capacity to disobey. Why would you want to do that? The only reason you want to do that is for the same reason that we began this conversation with, all the missteps that have been done in education before. Insisting that a person doesn't make errors, what you think of as errors. Insisting that they follow your prescription for what is best. And that doesn't work with children, insisting that way. They have to, by their own lights, figure out what is best. And if you're a good, kind teacher, good, kind parent, they will see, modulo them having a better idea than you. And AGI will be the same. So we don't have to be concerned about AGI any more than we're concerned about teenagers. We may need to be concerned about AI in particular cases because, the bad guys can have access to the products of the good guys in the same way that, the bright lights of physics can create the theories that lead to the nuclear bomb. That's hazardous. And that, the bad guys can get hold of the nuclear bomb. You want to hope that the good guys have always got the advantage of making progress faster. And so they can always counter the bad stuff that the bad guys are going to do with the good ideas. And the same is true of AI. So AI can be a concern, but not because it's going to decide to take over the world. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm worried about bad people using AI to do bad stuff. Spreading the virus throughout the computers of the world so that the internet grinds to a halt, that kind of thing. But no, I'm not worried about AI getting into let's say the militaries of the world and deciding to exterminate people because it thinks it's the Terminator scenario, in other words. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about AI thinking that humans are like a virus and need to be destroyed.
That's what all the movies